Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Daily Devotions through Redeeming Life Fellowship. My name's Dan, and I'm a teaching pastor here, and just really excited that we get this opportunity to read and study the Bible together. And here at Redeeming Life, as you may know, we follow the Revive School reading plan that's designed to take us through the Old and New Testaments over the course of 2 years. And we've been walking through and studying the Bible's wisdom literature portion, which includes books like Job and Psalms and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. And within this reading plan, yesterday, we just introduced what happens to be the shortest book in the wisdom corpus. That's only 8 chapters long, so it takes us about 3 days to ruminate over it. And it also happens to be arguably one of the most difficult to interpret, especially for daily devotions. Because Song of Songs, whether you're a new Christian or a pastor or a scholar, the Song of Songs is actually really difficult to read for a particular reason, which I'll explain later. What I want for you and I, when we're studying the Bible, that I know that there's a tendency to if you're reading through the Bible and you find something that is very difficult, shocking, extremely foreign, confusing, is the temptation to just keep reading on and to just trudge through and just keep going, and get what you can out of it and just keep moving on to the next book, the next section, the next author. And I don't want us to do that with this, mainly because I do believe that God does have something to say to you and I through a book like the Song of Songs, in that if we read it too hastily or if we don't wrestle with the difficulties that a book like Song of Songs presents, we're going to miss out on a good deal that God would want to say to us through a book of love poetry like the Song of Songs. Here's one of the things that makes a book like Song of Songs so difficult to interpret. It is one of only 2 books throughout, I believe, the entire Bible that actually makes no mention of God whatsoever. From chapter 1 to chapter 8, no mention of God, no mention of the Lord, no mention of Jesus, no mention of the Holy Spirit, where as you're reading, in some measure or another, God's presence appears to be rather absent. So that as you're reading, there's nothing that pops out as especially theological or spiritual, that has something to say about our human condition and our right relationship with the Lord. It doesn't really have a whole lot in that respect, but rather, as it's read literally, taken as face value, it is a book about love poetry that is highly sensual, and even in some sections, just positively erotic and sexual, which has made many scholars and interpreters throughout the ages, Jewish and Christian alike, almost squirm and blush and thinking, goodness gracious, what's the purpose of having love poetry in the Bible? This seems very carnal, very fleshly, even almost unsuitable, unworthy of a biblical text. And it's important to know that with the Song of Songs, the New Testament doesn't really make any allusions or echoes or quotes of the Song of Songs, so that the importance of Song of Songs to the New Testament writers doesn't really seem to be there. Those are the sort of things that make reading a book like Song of Songs difficult for us today. What I want you to guard against, I'm not saying that you can't be a believing and fruitful Christian and take this interpretive approach to Song of Songs, but what many Christians, well-meaning Christians, have done with regards to trying to interpret Song of Songs is to interpret it as an allegory. What is an allegory? An allegory is when the language of the text and what it's talking about carries only a symbolic reference to something else. There's that everything that's in the text is purely a symbolic reference to something else. So, again, many well-meaning Christians have taken a book like Song of Songs and treated it as an allegory between this lover and the beloved, and taken it as an allegory for Christ as the bridegroom and his church as the bride, so that what you see in Song of Songs is treated or is understood as an analog that carries over into the New Testament, that understands the intimacy and the covenant love between God and his church. Again, I'm not saying that you can't be a good Christian and interpret Song of Songs like that, but in the first place, there's no evidence that that when those comparisons are made between Jesus as being the bridegroom and his church the bride, whether in 2 Corinthians or Ephesians or Revelation, that any of those have any hints or allusions to the Song of Songs, that none of the New Testament writers interpreted the Song of Songs that way, so that we really don't have the license to be able to interpret the Song of Songs in that way either. If that analog, if that allegory extends too far, it can go into some problematic places. And there's nothing, no clear indication within Song of Songs itself that it was ever intended to be understood as an allegory, whether between God and Israel or Jesus and the church. There's nothing within the text that is a clear and obvious indication about that. So what I would encourage you to do is to try and read Song of Songs for its face value, as a literal interpretation. Read it and recognize it as a glorious celebration of the joy, the pleasure, the delight that God has fashioned inside the covenant relationship of romantic love between a man and a woman united in holy matrimony. That the pleasures of physical intimacy, sexual intercourse, these are things that our human sexuality is not, on the one hand, something that is to be abused or to be perverted, but on the other hand, not something that's to be shunned or to be treated as dirty and corrupted, but that there's a divine intention in the way God has associated the affection and the union of a male and female that reflects the glories of God's creation that he had in mind for us at the beginning in Genesis chapters 1 and 2. And indeed, some, I think, have rightly looked at Song of Songs as something like an extended commentary of the beauty and the glory of what God has intended to do and manifest in Eden itself. That these pleasures and the way that they're received and enjoyed in a way that that reflects God's intentions and God's desires for human flourishing is a good thing. The pleasures of emotional, physical intimacy between a husband and a wife is a good thing. And it's something that its roots can be traced to the heart of God itself. And I will remark in passing that what you see in the Song of Songs does say something about how God, in all of his creation, has filled his creation with pleasures that he invites you and I to partake in. That God is the God who's responsible for making things, whether it's delights of the eyes or the tastes or the touch or the sounds, that we find delight in them. And that because things are pleasurable is not of itself any reason to shun them, and that we don't just take pleasure by itself and make that a means to an end. If we've read through Ecclesiastes, we're forewarned against things like that. That the highest pleasure, if that be sex and sexual intimacy, copulation itself, as the greatest thing, if that's treated and exalted as the thing above all things, it will let us down. And I don't think that a book like Song of Songs is intended to be read that way. Indeed, when it's in chapter 2, it talks about catching for us the foxes that are a pest in the vineyard. Can be, and I think should be, understood metaphorically about protecting the sanctity of marriage for outside influences that have a way of corrupting the beauty of what God has made. And so try and read Song of Songs, and try not reading into Song of Songs, but read it for what it is. Maybe even, chuckle and laugh at some of these metaphors for love poetry that seem a little bit foreign to us, like a nose like a tower and teeth like sheep and navel's like a goblet. Maybe this is just, love poetry that's more familiar with shepherds than it is for us, but it's okay to laugh at that, I think. That is my encouragement for you today, to recognize Song of Songs as a whole, indeed a book that celebrates the glorious pleasures of God that he has designed in making, in filling the covenant fidelity between a man and a woman, and a husband and a wife, with pleasure, and a pleasure that cannot be found anywhere else, and is to be guarded, cherished, and enjoyed. That's what Song of Songs should remind us about. How we should understand our human sexuality. So yes, continue to read. Thank you so much for joining us for the daily devotions. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click on the subscribe button so that you'll get notifications for these videos when we release them. Also, if you haven't, you can look in the description box below and find a link to the Revive School reading plan. You'll find our website, our Facebook page, opportunities to support us financially for this church plant in Whitley County. And looking forward to seeing you, whether it be next Wednesday, next Sunday, or our upcoming, in less than a week, Cinco de Church show, which is going to be exciting. You don't want to miss our 1-year anniversary as a church. this coming May 5th. So just excited for all of it. I can't contain it. So you guys are wonderful. God bless you. May God keep you, and may God continue to use us and shape us and mold us in a way that's pleasing to him. So I love you guys.